Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I'm back with 4 all new fall decor DIYs. All of today's projects are all apple themed. It's the first time I've done apples here on my channel, so I really hope that you enjoy all of today's projects. Now let's go ahead and get started. For the first DIY today, I'm going to be using one of these unfinished wood apples from Dollar Tree. It has a little holder or box on the inside and then the 2 apple shapes on the outside. The first thing I'm going to be doing is painting both sides of the apple shape, and I just mixed 2 colors from Folk Art. They're the colors Imperial and Tuscan Red. Then for the leaf portion on this apple, I'm using the color Spanish Moss, also from Folk Art. And then for the stems of my apple, I'm using the color Raw Sienna, also from Folk Art. For this project, I'm also going to be using the wheels that came from this race car wood shop pack from Dollar Tree, and you can get this in the toy section. These are what the wooden wheels look like, and since they do have a little hole in the middle, I just placed them on a dowel, so it was a little bit easier for me to paint, and I painted all of them with a black chalk paint. Then for the center of my wheels, I'm going to be using 4 of these wood rounds. These did come from a Dollar Tree assorted wood pack that I got a few years ago, and I'm going to be painting all 4 of them with my plastered color chalk paint from Waverly. For this project, I'm also going to be needing to make a handle. So for this, I just used a wooden dowel from Dollar Tree and I've cut it down. The longer piece is 3 inches and then the shorter piece here is 1 inch. And I painted both of these pieces with that same plaster colored paint. To go on the very front of my apple, I did already create this little decal on my Cricut, and I will have it linked down in my description box if you guys are wanting to use it as well. I just got it all centered in the middle of my apple and got it transferred, and then it was time to start attaching my wheels. I used hot glue to do this, and I just placed the wheels at the very bottom of the apple where it goes out a little bit. And then right in the center of the black wheels, I added those little wood rounds that I painted with the plaster color. Then I'm taking one of these tumbling tower blocks from Dollar Tree and I'm painting it with the plaster colored paint. Then once the paint has completely dried, I'm then going to be using hot glue to attach it to the very bottom of my apple, but I am going to be leaving about 1/4 inch of the block sticking out, and this is where I'm going to be attaching the handle to the wagon that I have now created. Now I did want the handle to my wagon to stick out kind of on a diagonal, so I just held it out and then just placed a bunch of hot glue at the very bottom and then just held it into place until the glue completely set. I did end up going back through and adding some of that plaster colored paint over the glue just to cover it up, and then I am going to be attaching with the hot glue once again the little 1 inch dowel handle part. Next, I'm going to be using 5 of these unfinished wooden apples or pumpkins. You can use them for either one, and they are from Dollar Tree. I'm going to be painting all 5 of them with that same paint that I created earlier, the Imperial and the Tuscan Red color mixed together just to make this deeper colored red. And then for the stems of all of the apples, I'm using the color Raw Sienna. Now it was time to start filling the inside of my apple wagon. I first took a piece of floral foam and just set that in the inside, and then I took some of what looks like faux straw. You can also get this at Dollar Tree. I just cut it up a little bit and then placed it right over top of the floral foam. And then over top of the straw, I'm just placing all of my little apples on the inside. Now, once I had them all placed in, I didn't really think that they popped being all of the red color, so I did end up going back through and repainting 2 of the apples the Spanish Moss color from Folk Art, and then I ended up liking the way that that looked a lot better. And here is my apple wagon all finished. This was such a fun and easy project, and I love how it turned out. I'm really enjoying having some of the apple decor in my home this fall. It's just a little bit different than all of the pumpkins that you see everywhere. Moving right along into DIY number 2. For this one, I'm using one of these arrow signs that you can get from Dollar Tree. This one does say ceremony on it, and obviously I wanted to switch it up a little bit. So I'm just painting over the entire arrow with my plaster colored chalk paint, and I did do 2 coats just to get that ceremony word all covered up. I'm also going to be using 3 of these unfinished wooden apples from Dollar Tree, and I'm painting all of them with that same red color that I created in the last project. It was Tuscan Red and Imperial mixed together to create this really deep red color. And then for the stems of all of the apples, I'm painting them with raw sienna, and then for the leaves, I'm using the color Spanish Moss. Another item I'm going to be using from Dollar Tree to create today's project are these unfinished wood letters, and I'm spelling out the word apples. For each letter, I'm going to be painting them with my rich black chalk paint from Folk Art. Then before I start adding anything, I decided to use some of that same black colored chalk paint to distress my arrow. I mainly used the color around the edges, but I did do a little bit of distressing on the mid section of the arrow as well. And then once I had that all finished, I started just placing my letters right in the center of where I'm gonna want to attach them. I always like to do this before I start just hot gluing them down, because I want to make sure I have them in the correct spot before I actually glue them down. So as you can see here, I'm just using hot glue to attach each letter. Originally, I was just gonna leave the apples plain and add some Spanish moss over top, but then I changed my mind and ended up using this black and white checked ribbon from Dollar Tree. I just tied it around the stem and leaf of the apple and then just made a really simple bow, and then cut off the ends of the bow to the length of my liking. And then I did this for all 3 of the apples. I also wanted to make the apples pop a little bit more, so I took some of my plaster colored paint and I dry brushed that around all of the edges of the apples, and then I used a little bit on the fronts of the apples as well. Now that I have all of my apples ready, I can start gluing them to the very back of my arrow. I started with the center apple first, and then I hot glued the other 2 apples on each side of the one in the middle. And this is what my apple sign looks like all finished. Again, another really easy and inexpensive project for this fall, and I'm really loving the apples this year. Before we get into the next project, I do want to let you guys know that today's video is in collaboration with my friend Lianep from DIY Beauty on Purpose here on YouTube. I'm sure most of you have heard of her already, but if you haven't, you definitely need to check her out. She is so sweet, and she has so many great DIYs over on her channel. She does lots of Dollar Tree DIYs, and she's also going to be doing some fall Dollar Tree DIYs. So when you're done watching my video, make sure that you go check her video out. I will have a link to her video and her channel down in my description box. And if you guys didn't know, she also has an Etsy shop, which is amazing. She has so many great products over on her shop, or in her shop. And then she also has a blog and Amazon page and all the fun stuff. So I will have a link to all of her things down in my description box if you want to go check her out. But be sure to go watch her video after mine. Now getting right back into the DIYs. For DIY 3, I'm going to be using 2 of these wooden crates from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to be using my Folk Art wood tint in the color Walnut. I'm just painting it on with a small brush so that I can make sure that I get in all of the little grooves on the crate, and then once I have a good section painted, I just wipe the excess off, and I continued to do that until I had both crates all stained. I'm also going to be using this paint stick that I've already cut down to 5 1/4 by 1 inch. Now this I did not get at Dollar Tree, it was just in my craft stash, but you could always use one of the wood planks from Dollar Tree like this one here, and then just cut it down to the size that I'm using. For my paint stick, I am going to be painting it with this plaster colored chalk paint from Waverly, and then I'm using 5 of these wooden apples. These I got off of Amazon, and they are such great quality. If you want to check them out, I will have a link down in my description box, and I'm painting them with that same color I created, the Tuscan Red and Imperial mixed together. I'm just painting the front of all of the apples this color, and then for the stems I'm using raw sienna once again, and then the leaf on the apples I'm using the color Spanish Moss. Now this project that I'm doing is mostly Dollar Tree. You will see a few items that are from a few different places, but mainly it will be from Dollar Tree. To go in the center of each one of the apples that I just painted, I wanted to have mini letters to spell out the word apples. So I cut them out on my Cricut, and then I'm just transferring them to the center of each one of my apples. If you don't have a Cricut to cut the letters out, you can use stickers from Dollar Tree, or you can even write them out with a white paint marker. Next up, I'm going to be using 4 of these wood dowels from Dollar Tree. They are 8 inches long, and I'm using my folk art wood tint in the color Walnut. I'm just painting the tint on and then using an old towel to wipe away the excess. And again, I did this for all 4 dowels. Then it was time to start assembling everything together. I hot glued both of the crates together, but for the top crate, I had it so that it was glued to the bottom crate with the bottom on top, if that makes sense. I'm then going to be hot gluing 2 of the dowels together, and then I'm taking those 2 dowels and hot gluing them on the left side of the top of my crate. I'm then doing the same thing for the leftover 2 dowels. I'm gluing those together and then hot gluing those 2 on the right side of the top of my crate. Now going back to the mini apples, I'm taking each one and placing it in the center of that paint stick that I had painted with the color plaster, making sure they're all centered, and then just hot gluing each one of them back down into place. I'm then using hot glue to attach the paint stick to the very top of my dowels, and I did leave about a 1/2 inch of the dowel sticking out at the top. Next, I'm going to start creating all of the little detail pieces I'm going to be adding. So first up, I just took some burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree, and I'm cutting that to the length that goes between my 2 dowels. I'm going to be creating a mini banner. So once I have that piece cut, then I'm just cutting this piece of burlap ribbon in half to create a thinner piece. And then I'm going to be just cutting triangles going all the way up to the very edge of the ribbon. And I just continue to do that all the way down the ribbon so that it then looks like a banner. I then thought it would be really cute to add some of this red and white checked cardstock. This, I believe, is from Hobby Lobby. So I just cut a strip of it, and then from the strip, I'm just going to be cutting tiny little triangles, because these little triangles are going to go right in the center of the burlap ribbon triangles that I just cut. To attach these little triangles, I'm just using a tiny bit of hot glue in the center of the burlap ribbon and then just pressing the cardstock over top of that to attach it. Now that I have my banner created, I'm using hot glue at the very top of the left-hand side of the banner and just gluing that under the A, and then I'm using some hot glue all the way on the right side of the banner and hot gluing that side underneath the letter S. I thought it would be really cute to add some mini apples to this piece. So to do that, I'm using some of these mini wooden beads from Dollar Tree, and I'm just placing them on this little piece of wood that I had. I thought it would be a lot easier to paint them this way. And the color that I'm using to paint my apples is Imperial from Folk Art. I did not mix this one. I used just the straight Imperial to paint all 4 of these beads. And then I wanted to add some green apples as well. So the color I'm using for these is the color Spanish Moss from Folk Art. Now that I have all of my apples painted, I then needed to create stems for them. To do that, I'm just using this piece of balsa wood that I had in my craft stash, and I'm painting it with the color Raw Sienna. Once that paint dried, I'm then using a utility knife to just cut very small chunks of this off. If you're not familiar with balsa wood, it is a very soft wood that's super easy to cut and really easy to dent up as well. So after I had the chunks all cut off, I realized that they were just a little bit too thick. So then I just used my utility knife again to just cut that in half. And then I hot glued each one of those little pieces inside of my little bead to create my apple. I then continued to do that same thing for the rest of all of my beads to create all of my apples. Next, I'm using one of these glass bottles from Dollar Tree, and I thought it would be a really cute idea to make this my apple cider jug. So I'm taking the Raw Sienna color from Folk Art, and I'm just squeezing it right inside of the bottle, and then I'm gonna put the cork back on the bottle and then just roll the bottle around so that the paint coats the entire inside of the bottle. I'm then using a smaller bottle, also from Dollar Tree, and I'm doing the same thing with this one. I'm just putting a little bit of that raw sienna color inside of the bottle. Only this time I didn't wait around for it to coat the inside. I just took a paintbrush and painted the inside of the bottle, and then once it was completely coated, I put the cork back on. Next, I'm going to be creating mini labels for my apple cider bottles. I'm using this red and white cardstock from Hobby Lobby, and I'm just cutting a piece of it out. As you can see here, I already have a piece of white cardstock that I cut out and then with a pen wrote the words apple cider on. I lost that clip, but it's really easy. You just cut out cardstock and write the words on it. And then, as you can see here, I'm just cutting that red and white checked cardstock down so that it goes right behind the white cardstock. I'm then taking the checked cardstock and hot gluing it to the front of my bottle. And then once that's attached, I'm using my glue stick from Dollar Tree to attach the apple cider cardstock over top of the checked cardstock. I then created a second one for my second bottle, only this time I did it a little bit easier. I just used my glue stick and attached the apple cider cardstock right over top of the checked cardstock before I attached it to my bottle. You would have thought I would have done this the first time, but I didn't. So it was a little easier this second time around. Next, I'm taking 2 popsicle sticks from Dollar Tree, and I'm gonna start by cutting off the round ends. And I just did that with my utility knife. I scored over it in the same spot several times and then just snapped it off. It was really easy to do this. Just be careful, you don't want to cut yourself. I then cut the other side of the popsicle stick to the length that I wanted it to be the same way. I just scored over it several times and then just snapped the stick in half like you can see me do here. And then I did another one the exact same length because I am going to be creating a small box. This little piece of wood that you saw there, it is going to be the bottom of my box. It did come from the assorted wood pack that I got from Dollar Tree, and it needed to be a little bit shorter because I needed it to be the same length of the popsicle stick that I just cut. So here I'm just cutting that down to size. And then I needed to do 2 smaller ones to go on each side of the little box that I'm making. So as you can see, I'm just making sure I have it marked to where I need to cut, and then doing the same thing with my utility knife that I did with the other pieces. Just scored over them and snapped them in half. And since I need 2 to go on each side, I cut out 2 of them. I'm then painting all of those pieces with my plastered colored chalk paint, and I did have a few leftover cut pieces that I'll be using for signs on my piece. Then I'm going to be assembling everything together. I used hot glue to assemble my little rectangle box, and as you can see here, I did the 2 longer side pieces first, and then I attached the 2 shorter pieces on each end. Once my box is all complete, I'm then going to be adding some straw from Dollar Tree to the inside, and I'm using hot glue first on the inside and then just pressing that straw over top to make sure that it's nice and secure. And then I'm going to be adding the mini apples that I made earlier on in the video. I'm using 2 red ones and 2 green ones, and I'm just hot gluing them right over top of the straw. Next, I'm going to be creating a sign to go on the front of my crate. I'm using one of these wood planks from Dollar Tree that I've already cut down, and I'm painting it with my plastered colored chalk paint. Once the paint has dried on this, I'm then going to be transferring on one of these decals that I created with my Cricut. It says pick your own with 3 apples underneath. If you guys are interested in using this cut file, I will have it linked down in my description box. After I have it all transferred on, you will see what I'm doing here. I ended up writing a bunch of stuff underneath the pick your own decal that I made, but I did not like it at all. So you can see this is what it looked like, and then I decided that I didn't like it. So I'm just using my utility knife to cut it off where I had wrote all of the words underneath. I don't like my handwriting and I think it looked really sloppy, so I just used my utility knife to cut that off like you can see me doing here. And I ended up just using the pick your own part, and the piece of wood ended up being 3 inches by 1 inch. Then I wanted to make another little sign, so with one of these scrap popsicle stick pieces that I had left over, I had painted that with a plaster color, and then with a pen I'm just writing apples 5 cents on it. And then I wanted to have it on a little stake, and I had one of these little wood pieces from the Dollar Tree assorted wood pack. I quickly painted this with the plaster color, and then I just hot glued the apple little sign to the wood stake. Next, I am just going to start assembling more things together. I am hot gluing my little apple box on the right hand side of my crate, and then I hot glued the apple 5 cent sign right over top of where I had placed the apples. I then hot glued each one of my apple cider bottles on the left side of my crate, and then I thought it would be really cute to add some faux donuts. So I'm using these mini wood beads from Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to be painting them. I'm using the River Walk color from Folk Art. Again, I'm using one of these little mini wood stakes, and it's perfect to add a bead on the end of it so you can paint it without getting your fingers all painted over. So once I have those all painted, I'm going to be creating another little mini sign with one of the popsicle sticks that I had left over, and I'm just writing donuts 10 cents on this one. And then I'm going to be hot gluing each one of my donuts right in front of my apple cider bottles. And I did 3. I did 2 donuts next to each other and then 1 on top. And then I added my little pick your own sign right in the center of my wood crates. And then after that, I added the donuts 10 cents on the left hand side of the crate right underneath the donuts. Next, I'm taking one of these birch wood pieces from Dollar Tree, and I'm hot gluing it to the left hand side of the front of my crate. And then I'm going to be using my 3 leftover mini apples that I have, and I'm hot gluing them on the very top of the birch wood piece. Then to add some detail to my pick your own sign, I'm using the red and white checked cardstock once again. I'm just measuring it to the length that it will fit on the top and bottom of my sign. And then I'm just painting on a little bit of Mod Podge on the top of the sign and then just gluing on the cardstock. And again, I did the same thing to the bottom. I just cut the cardstock down to size, used some Mod Podge, and then placed the cardstock over top to attach it. I thought it'd be really cute to add some corn stalks to this piece, so I'm using some raffia from Dollar Tree, and I'm just taking several pieces of it all together and then just cutting it down to the length that I want. I did try to use the pieces that were a little bit thicker, and then I took just another strand of raffia and I wrapped it around the center of all of the ones that I have bunched together, and then just tied it really tight to create my cord stalk. I then trimmed it up a little bit with my scissors and then hot glued this one on the right hand side of the front of my crates. After I had this cornstalk all created and on, I thought I needed to add a second one. So what I ended up doing was just creating another one, but the little birch wood piece that I have already attached, I peeled that off, put the cornstalk on, and then I re-glued my donut sign and then also my birch wood piece over top of the cornstalk. And this is what my mini apple stand looks like all finished. I love this one so much. This is by far my favorite project from today's video. I had so much fun creating it. It did take a little bit of extra time on this one, but I think it is so worth it, and I really hope that you enjoy this one as well. Now moving into DIY number 4. For this project today, I'm going to be using this apple picture frame from Dollar Tree, and I am first starting out by removing the center wood piece of the frame and then just removing it, and then I'm painting the outside portion of my apple with that color that I've been creating today with the Tuscan Red and the Imperial colors from Folk Art. I just mixed them together to create this really deep red, and I only had to do 1 coat of paint. Then for the leaf of the apple, I'm doing this one in Spanish Moss, and then the stem of the apple I'm doing in the color Raw Sienna. Then for the inside wood circle that I removed, I'm painting that with my plaster colored paint. For this project, I'm also going to be using one of these wood planks from Dollar Tree. I have cut this one down as well, and it is 4.5 by 3 inches, and I'm painting this with that plaster paint as well. Then once the paint was dry on my circle, I have created this apple cider served fresh daily sign on my Cricut. I will have it linked down in the description box if you're interested in the download. And then I'm just getting it transferred right in the center of my circle. And then it did have a little line, but it looked kind of wonky. So I ended up just removing it and then using a pen to create 2 lines. I'm just using this little wood plank piece that I had to make sure that I have a straight line, and like I said, I did 2 lines instead of 1, and I ended up really liking the look of it. Next, I'm placing hot glue around the back side of my circle and then just placing it right in the center of my apple to attach it. Then I wanted to have a little bit of distressing on the centerpiece, so I'm using some of my Java colored chalk paint, and I'm just dry brushing that all around the edges of the circle and then a little bit on the front of the circle as well around all of the vinyl. I'm taking some of this burlap ribbon and just cutting a strip of it out, and then I'm cutting that strip in half because I need to have a thinner piece of this burlap ribbon. I'm then taking it and wrapping it around the back side of the apple, and then the 2 front pieces I'm just crisscrossing around each other, and then I'm hot gluing those into place so that they don't move around. I'm also going to be using this green and cream color checked ribbon. This is from Hobby Lobby, but I know that Dollar Tree has similar ribbon. I'm just wrapping that around the burlap ribbon at the very top, and then I'm just making a really simple bow, cutting off the ends of both of my ribbons, and then I'm just making sure to hot glue my green ribbon into place. Then I'm taking another strip of this burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree. I'm cutting it pretty thin. I would say it's about 1 inch in thickness, and then I'm just going to be measuring that out to the same length that my wood plank piece is, and then I'm taking that piece of ribbon and just hot gluing it in the center of my wood plank. Now, I only had 1 piece on, and then I thought it needed to be a little bit thicker. I cut it too thin, so I ended up just adding another piece like you can see me doing here, and then I'm hot gluing my apple right in the center of my wood plank, right over top of that burlap ribbon. But then my apple didn't want to stay up, so I'm using 3 of these tumbling tower blocks from Dollar Tree. I'm hot gluing all of them together, and then I'm hot gluing those right behind my apple, and that is just gonna make my apple stay up without falling over. And this is what my apple cider sign looks like all finished. It was another really easy project that turned out super cute. I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and share it. Please don't forget to go check out my friend Lianep's channel to see which fall DIYs she created. Again, I'll have her info linked down in my description box. I would love to hear which project from today's video was your favorite. If you guys are not subscribed, I hope that you will consider subscribing, and thank you so much for watching.